Welcome to Table for 92, element number 64, gadolinium. It's number 64 because it has exactly 64 protons within its nucleus. It has been a little easier to find a food pairing with gadolinium than the other lanthanide or rare earth elements. While none of the lanthanides have any real connection with food or any biological role in the body, I've kind of been doing foods either associated with the place the element was discovered, or in this case, foods from where the namesake of the element was born. I came out pretty lucky on this one because the legendary chemist Johann Gadolin happened to be born in Turku, Finland, or what is now Finland. It was actually part of Sweden at the time Gadolin was born. And Turku was the ancient capital of Finland, and now it's kind of known as like a capital for foodies in Nordic countries. So today we're making some Finnish cinnamon rolls with a lightly roasted coffee, just like the Finns like it. This isn't like an ancient recipe or anything. Like, I mean, cinnamon and cardamom don't grow anywhere near Northern Europe. They come from South Asia, and these rolls were only popularized in the 1700s when Gadolin was born. And cinnamon and cardamom were super expensive in those times. Like, I mean, it would have been a 6-month plus voyage from India to Europe in those times. So cinnamon rolls were really only for the wealthy at that time. And you know, like, let's face it, it was almost exclusively the wealthy that did science at this point in history. They were the only ones with the free time allowed for study for the most part. So I say with great confidence, Johann Gadolin definitely ate some cinnamon rolls in his lifetime. To make the dough, I'm going to combine warm milk and add yeast with some of the flour. Stir until the yeast is completely dissolved. Then add the sugar, salt, cardamom, and egg. Add the flour gradually and mix until combined. Let the dough rise in a warm place for about an hour. It's not going to double in size or anything, but it's going to rise a little bit. And you know, this recipe, by the way, is from the official Finnish government website. I just find this so interesting. I've visited many official government websites, and I think it really reflects like what foods mean to the culture of different peoples. Like they want you to know about them on their government website. The US government, you know, they don't have any recipes. I think if we did, we'd like throw in apple pie or like buffalo wings or PB&J. Even though gadolinium is named after Johann Gadolin, he did not discover it. He did, however, discover the first rare earth element, yttrium, which is not part of the lanthanide group. The lanthanides are all considered to be rare earth elements, but scandium and yttrium are also rare earth elements, but not lanthanides. I know it's confusing, but you know, these are the secrets of the universe. It should be a little confusing. But yeah, one thing you may have noticed is like the Nordic connection. Scandium named after Scandinavia, yttrium named after the famous village of Ytterby, where 7 elements were discovered. The Nordic peoples had an incredible impact on the discovery of the elements, especially the rare earth elements. So for the filling, I'm gonna take about half a stick of like nice, soft, warm butter, 3 tablespoons of sugar, 2.5 teaspoons of cinnamon, and mix all that together and set aside. Gadolinium is a very important element in medicine today. A lot of the other lanthanide elements are as well. They're fairly similar, you know, that's why they're thrown into their own little subgroup among all the other elements. But you know, we'll get to the uses of gadolinium in a minute. So the story with the discovery of gadolinium, the lanthanide elements, and the rare earth elements can really start anywhere in the history of science, but I'm going to start with Johann Gadolin's discovery of yttrium because it was incredibly important. The year is 1787 in the village of Ytterby on the windswept island of Rosaro, located, you know, pretty near the Swedish capital of Stockholm. Ytterby had long been an important mining community, producing iron and feldspar. At that time, a young lieutenant, his name was Carl Arrhenius, discovered a black rock much too heavy for its own good. He passed the rock off to a couple geologists, and the rock eventually made it to Johann Gadolin, who upon analyzing the mysterious mineral found a large chunk of it to be made out of yet unknown chemical elements. This now famous mineral was called ytterbite, but would later be called gadolinite to honor Ole Johann. He correctly identified there was a new element inside the strange mineral that would eventually be yttrium, but due to the lack of like technological advances at the time, I mean, it was the late 1700s after all, he would only be able to identify one element out of the unknown bits hiding in that black mineral. It wasn't until about 90 years later in 1880 that a Swiss chemist, de Marignac, actually isolated the spectral line. That was a big deal. Then the famous French chemist, de Beauce-Bourgeon, isolated an oxide of the element, confirming its existence, and named it gadolinium to celebrate the Finnish chemist who did such a wonderful research job back in the 1700s on that weird little black mineral. cut each one diagonally. This is the big difference between the Swedish and Finnish cinnamon rolls. Kind of reminds me of a bear claw, but apparently in Finnish, kurvapusti weirdly translates to split ears. When you push it down, it kind of squeezes out on both sides and it kind of looks like ripped ears. Cover it with a clean towel and let it rise for another 30 minutes before putting it in the oven. But still, gadolinium and the other rare earth elements aren't really that rare. They're just really difficult to extract from the minerals they're found in. But you know, rare earth elements makes it sound even like cooler and more expensive. And you know, it's again really difficult to get pure samples of this. Like it wasn't until 1935 that actual metallic gadolinium was produced, 148 years after that black mineral was first passed on to gadolin. I mean, yeah, learning about the periodic table really constantly gives me this sense of intergenerational cooperation in science. Like those early scientists did what they could to uncover the mysteries of the universe at the time they lived. And you know, they just had to hope that somewhere down the line, the technology would be developed to further their research. And in the case of Johann Gadolin, he would be immortalized for his contributions to science. Way more than that guy Samarium was named after. He didn't do enough for an element to be named after him, but they did it anyway. I mean, who cares? As for the uses of gadolinium, really important in medicine, as I mentioned before, as with a lot of the lanthanides, a lot of them are used in medicine. Gadolinium is really well known as a contrasting agent in MRI imaging. Since 1994, 6 MRI contrasting agents have been approved by the FDA, and as they like to do in medicine, they gave them impossible to pronounce names, such as gadoterite megalamine, or the more simplified gadolinium tetraazocycladiode cane tetraacetic acid. There you go, contrasting agents. So these contrasting agents improve the imaging of the internal structure of the body and are very, very complicated. But with a name like gadolinium tetraazocycladiode cane tetraacetic acid, I would figure it should be very complicated. By the way, have you ever seen an MRI with the screen off? It's nuts. Gadolinium is used in other stuff though. Just 1% of gadolinium added to iron and chromium alloys can make the metal much stronger in high temperature and oxidation environments, which means it's great for use in data storage disks and other electronic components, so it's in that stuff. Also in magnets, that's a common thread among the lanthanides. Back in the day, gadolinium was most known as being used in television screens, but that was back when like TVs were made out of wood and steel. Gadolinium compounds were used in the brand spanking new color TVs, making phosphors for television tubes to produce red, green, and blue light. All right, so the cinnamon buns are finished. Anyway, they're absolutely delicious. I don't have much of like a sweet tooth, so for me this is like perfect because, you know, in the US here, we would take this finished product and then like dunk it in icing and then eat it. But for me, this is just perfect. So yeah, you know, you have these while they're still warm with a little cup of coffee. Finland drinks like the most coffee per capita of any country in the world, but you know, it's pretty cold there. The capital, Helsinki, is the second furthest north capital in the world. Dark 6 months out of the year, you're eating a lot of these and drinking a lot of coffee. Unfortunately, we don't know a lot more about Gadolin's discoveries as we would like to. The Great Fire of 1827 that started in a bakery, maybe making cinnamon rolls, it destroyed pretty much the entire city, including Gadolin's laboratory and mineral collection. So that was gadolinium, named after a cool dude who did cool things. And I'd like to think, you know, he took a little time enjoying a nice cinnamon bun and coffee to rest his mind after sciencing his way into the pantheon of great chemists. Thank you. See you next time.